Hi, y'all. It's Bridget Cutchall with Real Things Living. Today, my guest is Christian Ray Flores. Hopefully, I pronounced that correctly. He is an entrepreneur, an author. He's a high performance coach and a podcast host himself. Can you say hi, Christian?
Hey, Bridget, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. I love connecting with people who have wonderful backgrounds. We all have interesting backgrounds and how we shouldn't say survive, but we become stronger and resilient from it. And what intrigued me, I think, is your background as a child, you were a refugee, sorry, from Chile. How old were you at the time?
I was 5 years old when there was a military coup in Chile. I was living there with my family at the time, and my dad ended up in a concentration camp. They arrested like tens of thousands of people, killed a bunch of people. And after a few months, he was one of the lucky ones who actually walked out, and they released him. But he was not out of danger, so we were among the lucky few who were allowed into a UN protected refugee facility. And after a few months there, we ended up moving to Germany, and that sent us traveling. So, I experienced sort of an unusual level of civil unrest when I was a kid because I ended up in a military coup in Chile. We ended up in Africa. I grew up there 7 years in Africa, like more formative years, and there was a civil war going on there, like for several years actually. And after we moved out of there, my parents got divorced, unfortunately. And as a teenager, I ended up in Russia, which is during the Soviet Union. So I saw that thing fall apart in 91. So there's tanks in the streets. So, like in one lifetime, before I was 20, all of those things happened back to back to back. And that sort of level of change, uh, I would say lack of structure and security taught me a lot of stuff. Poverty as well, a lot of deprivation as well. We're quite poor for good periods of time there. And I love talking about resilience because of that, because I've seen people go through hard times and sort of shrink permanently, but I've also seen people grow out of it. And you can actually make that choice and figure out how to create growth out of your hardships.
I like how you said that. You make the choice. It's really the choice that you make. And
Yeah.
you obviously have it ingrained in you to make the right choice. I mean, I'm not going to blame anybody for making the wrong. You just everybody's different, but
Oh, of course.
it's amazing background what you went through as a child, and that definitely forms your brain and how you think. And you
Hmm.
probably what's the word? You developed your resilience. That's just a I we all have amazing stories. And my mother is from Europe. She's from France. And actually she's half Vietnamese and French, but they dealt with World War II, right? And
Yeah.
that's a different
Mm.
story in itself. But we're all, people are freaking out all the time about change, but look at all those changes that you dealt with. And that was normal for you. That was I should say normal, but that was your norm and you knew how to deal with it, or you figured out how to deal with it. You made the choice on how to do that. So in Russia, you said you were a teenager. Um,
Yeah, I came back when I was 14.
oh my gosh. Sorry, that's just I'm just visualizing this in my brain. It sounds like a really good movie, Christian. Some
It
kind
is. Yeah, it's pretty dramatic.
or a series, excuse me. But that's I should giggle, but you're probably like me. We've held dealt with stuff, and I find some humor in things.
I do
To
too. Absolutely. Uh-huh.
You have to. That's otherwise you're gonna be not want to move forward and make a choice. And some people are okay with the situation. I'm used to running around changes because I grew up as a military brat, not at the level of change as you, but that I help, they help me figure out that things aren't always the same. And you definitely have an amazing story. So when did you come to the United States?
I was 30 when I came to the United States. So this was 20 something years ago.
Oh, wow.
20 years ago exactly, actually. So no,
Wow.
I was actually, so it was later. I was 35.
Okay. Wow. That's in the US. What prompted you to come here?
Well, I married an American, and she actually moved. I had no intention of moving to the US originally. And so she moved to Russia, and we lived in Russia, and then we lived in Ukraine for a while. And we lived there for a few years together. All of our children were born there, three daughters. And Deb has some autoimmune issues, and the weather was just awful for her. Like it was basically impossible to stay for health reasons. And that's why we ended up moving.
Yeah, I could imagine it's very cold in Russia.
It's really cold. Yeah. Yeah. No sun, etc.
Yeah, that is so you have three daughters and they're all I guess that I'm assuming they have dual citizenship.
Actually, they didn't because I had a Chilean Russian citizenship
Okay.
until way later. Um, um, and then I sort of had to give up the Russian citizenship when I was 18, I think. So it was Soviet at the time, right?
Okay.
And I gave it up because they were sending people to Afghanistan, and I didn't want to go.
Oh,
I didn't want to die. I also didn't want to kill Afghanis, so
yeah,
I gave that up.
that's tough being a young man in that kind of environment because they're expected you
Yeah,
to fight.
yeah, they
And
do. Yeah, and it was the draft, right? So you had to go when you were 18, and I decided, yeah, that's not my cup of tea.
I got that. I understand. I mean, I as a woman, I didn't have to worry about that, but the men do.
Hmm.
It's just I've just got chills as you're talking. And also one more thing as you're talking about Ukraine and Russia, I know some Russians and Ukrainians because they're hockey players. My husband was like, "So did you play hockey?" I just had to ask that question.
No, I didn't actually. No, no,
It just
I think I got aversion for cold weather stuff because I grew up in Africa. So when we moved to Russia in high school, they would for physical education they would make you run cross country skiing, in the woods, and I just hated it. I really hated it.
yeah, definitely. Africa is a lot different temperature. It's just the environments that you've been around. I'm just amazed at what you've done. And so, how did you become a high performance coach or your business around that? I think you also have a company called Third Drive as well.
Y- That's right. Yeah, we do brand development, brand strategy for companies, founders, even personal brands, things like that. So we do media on the Third Drive side of things. And with Exponential, uh, the reason I became a performance coach is I have a particular sort of empathy, I would say, for people who are driven and want to do big things. And the reason for that is because I was one of those guys, right? So I come from very improbable success. And when I was in Russia, I got a good education, and my life sort of took a wild turn because uh, I decided to go into music, and I was very musical my whole life, but that wasn't my formal education. So I'm
Right.
like, yeah, I'm in my early 20s, I'm going to just give it a try. And I became one of the top pop stars in Russia, all of that territory, 15 different countries, for about a decade. And I went from nothing to playing sports arenas, being in TV, radio, magazine covers, things like that. And it was what that taught me is that there's a certain way that you can behave and think and envision the future that can bring you incredible results, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is that if you dream higher, dream big dreams, I have this poster behind me, Dream Big Dreams,
Yeah.
you have to sort of develop a certain level of resilience, um, coping with both fame and with a lot of stress that very few people are able to do. That's why most people just give up on their dreams. So I've seen people not get to their dreams, and I know how to get there, I think, on a higher level than most. But I also seen people get the first taste of success and then just don't know what to do with it. So I have a lot of empathy for people who are professionals and they have a vision for a company, a book, a career, a nonprofit, a way to serve people that drives them. And I just find myself particularly good at helping those people because I was one of those people and somebody helped me actually because I was just, I was at the peak of my fame and clinically depressed. And, somebody came along. He was this guy, he was a Canadian missionary, a pastor. and he became my first coach. And I treated him as a coach. I really listened to him, and he just turned my life around, helped me get the skills that I didn't have, get a moral framework, just sort of a framework for how life should be. And that allowed me to not only be where I was, but actually expand and do other things. So we ended up producing other bands. When we moved to the States, I started 3 companies, 2 nonprofits. Some of them failed, some of them didn't. That's just part of the
Right.
journey, you know? And because of somebody helping me at an accelerated rate at a certain point in time and coaching me through the hard times, I was able to sort of build a life, build a family, build a legacy. And that's sort of my favorite thing about being a coach is that if somebody just trusts me, I can help them get things like that happen at an accelerated rate because we can all learn, like we can read the books and we can listen to this podcast and get something from it and make some decisions. But if somebody is with you who sees around corners, you can
Mm.
accelerate your growth at an extraordinary rate. That's why it's called exponential life, because it's sort of this expansive, accelerating level of quality of life and impact on other people.
Well, you're asking them the right questions as well, probably, and listening.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's
Exactly.
important too. And there's not everybody's situation is so different.
That's
And
right. Mhm.
that's why I like what coaching and things like that is. It's also, I've heard that term being used as a mentor too, but you have the experience, and so you have the credibility
Yeah.
behind that. Right? You have a
Yeah,
lot.
that's sort of the deal is because when you become successful at anything, and it doesn't matter if you're a millionaire or not, right? You become a masterful at something. You're usually surrounded by people who are less experienced than you are. So those people can't really tell you what the future holds. They can't see around corners. And finding those people who are ahead of you a little bit, right? Who have been there, done that. It's an amazing way to live life because you can avoid a ton of mistakes. You can learn how to overcome obstacles and you get to the places you want to get to much faster.
That's true. That is something that when I was younger, we didn't have a lot of coaches. I wasn't aware of that. I had some I call them mentors.
Yeah, me too. Like I didn't have a coach. I had a pastor basically who was my coach. I just treated him as a coach. I said, "Tell me what to do," right?
Right. And we need that advice. And I just unknowingly learned from other people. I'm one of the, from that generation where women, it was hard to be in some of the business roles. It really in the US, believe it or not, it
Yeah.
was. But I'm pushing, holy cow, I'm going to show my age. I'm 59. So a lot of that has changed over the years, which is I think is good. I always look at gotta acknowledge the bad, right, Christian? But then you have to find the good in a situation.
Yeah.
People used to think that was not a good idea, but that's what helped me move forward. So I'm assuming you have a similar mindset around that, or
Yeah, absolutely.
that's good. And then you also um, have a book. Now you're an author called Little Book of Big Reasons to Love America. When did that book come out?
It is coming out in the fall.
Okay.
Okay. And I decided to write that book as it's like a coffee table book, right? It has lots of illustrations, and it's basically the immigrant's perspective on America. Very, very subjective, super biased. And and I found this biased view to be helpful over the years to a lot of the Americans who are, you get disappointed in your own country sometimes, right? And I think there's a healthy way to do it, to criticize, and I think it's a good perk of being in a democratic society, which, by the way, most people don't live in democratic societies.
Right.
Um, but you do that without really, you have to do that without losing your love for the country that gave you opportunities. And I think net, America has been a net positive influence in the world. It's done some awful things as well, but net, a lot of positive things that are very unique. And as an immigrant, I appreciate that. And I find that lots of Americans just have lost that. almost like an identity crisis. So I wanted to offer an optimistic view of their country back to them and say, hey, yes, criticize, yes, make it better, but please appreciate what you have because most people don't have what we have here.
That's true. And you definitely have that perspective of living in all these different countries, multiple countries, not
Yeah,
just
yeah,
one or two, but
yeah.
right. And all those other countries are kind of definitely further back than we are in
I mean,
America.
5.7 or 5.8 billion people live right now under an autocratic regime.
That is freaky.
It's freaky. 72% of the world are not free.
Right. And we don't take that we just don't think about that. We just I think I
Yeah,
call it being in a little bubble sometimes. I think we and that's why getting out and around and meeting other people and the being empathetic is so helpful. People will need
that's
to
right. Yeah.
look at different perspectives. That way you'll understand, oh gosh, I have a really good situation here. I mean, it's not perfect every day,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think it's good to appreciate what you have.
It definitely is. And I learned that I grew up in the South, by the way, and I was part of it when they changed all the stuff for black students and white students, and I was bused to the black. So I didn't care. I thought it was awesome. They were really nice to me. So
Okay.
that's kind of I had the empathy from of their perspective, right? If that makes sense. And of course, my parents were like, "What?" But but they were just fine, and I worked out. That's how I looked at it. I made good friends. They, um, I'm sure that's what you have a lot of good friends in every country. Oh, not a lot, but you have friends, right?
I do. Yeah, I do. I mean, and that's sort of one of the beauties of being in going from country to country. I mean, think about it. Latin America, Europe, Africa. Those are very different people with different languages. And when you are in those environments and you learn from them, you grow to appreciate a lot of what they have to offer to the world as well. And you just like people, when you have friends of every color, every breed, every
Right.
walk of life and socioeconomic status, you learn to love humanity. And I think that was sort of the greatest gift for me from being an exile essentially and an immigrant was to do that. And moving to the States with my family, I saw the fruit of that in the sort of in the long timeline because America is one of those very few countries in the world are built essentially on immigrants.
Yes.
Everybody is from somewhere else. And there's such power in that. So much creativity, so much industrious energy that keeping that sort of that blend without it breaking apart is really important, I think. And when the country becomes too divided, I think it's not a good thing. So saying, hey, you know what? Take a breather, look around. This is a good thing, actually. That you have differences of opinion, differences of perspective, experiences, etc. It's really great to be able to hold that tension and dialogue with people. It's actually really good in life in general. I mean, if you can be a much better professional when you learn how to appreciate and work with very, very different people in your work environment.
It definitely you made me think of the word leadership, right? We need more leadership, like that what you're talking about, the power and creativity and the empathy. And I also heard it called walk the talk, right? People say stuff, but do they actually do it, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So leadership is probably I've noticed a big topic on the stuff that I read and learn about how we need to be more open to these conversations like you had just mentioned. We just need to definitely be aware that we might look different and have a different background, but we all want the same thing. It's humanity, right?
Yeah. That's right. That's
Humanity
right.
is so critical, and I'm so fortunate. I didn't realize how much a great background I had when I was a teenager. I was kind of had an attitude, but my mom had been married multiple times. So, but I realized finally had a good father figure, when I was 17, finally. But that's part of it too. I didn't have, you know, appreciate, stuff that my mother had to go through. I didn't know what she was going through. She didn't share all that stuff, right? But definitely had a much stronger upbringing. You had to learn for yourself. I'm kind of like weaving back on that.
Yeah, I mean, I had a strong father figure until I was 14. My parents divorced, so I had this gap between then and when I sort of found my first mentor and coach.
Mhm.
And I saw the difference between how having guidance, having somebody in your life who knows your life and knows what lies ahead can make a difference in really accelerating your growth, helping you figure out how to overcome obstacles. So from the moment where I realized, oh my gosh, my progress can be accelerated if I'm around people who are ahead of me. So I sort of learned over time to surround myself with guides and mentors and coaches.
Right.
And I still have it. I mean, I'm 55 years old and I still have a set of really amazing people around me. But it takes time and effort and a lot of energy to actually nurture that family, that almost like your internal board of directors, you know.
I like that.
Eh,
Board of directors.
exactly. So when if you want to achieve more quicker, having that in your life is honestly essential because time is of the essence, right? If you get to the place you want to go faster, it makes a difference.
Correct. I like how you use the word guidance, and I also think that's much better than telling someone what to do. Because a lot of people are like me, or I resist that. If you're telling me to do something rather than guiding me, there's a difference.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it goes both ways.
Right.
So the person who is advising you should not tell you what to do, but guide you.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the humility to actually learn and seek guidance, I mean, no one's going to guide you.
Correct. And I didn't learn that until I was in my late teens, and because I had finally found out had a father figure, and
Exactly.
which I didn't know, but I had a great upbringing. And now that you just reflect on that, because we learn from that and we change, we have to improve ourselves. And now you also have your podcast called Headspace. What is that? Getting in your head and
Yeah, it's basically the headspace you're in. I mean, basically, the tagline is your headspace today will define your life space tomorrow.
okay.
So if you learn how to think creatively, how to not think as a victim, how to create, find peace, energy, creativity, flow every single day, your life will be transformed. And the whole thing is about how human flourishing works, how it all starts essentially with what's inside our head.
That's true. We have a very similar perspective on life, and I use the word real things living just because of the multiple cancer stuff I dealt with. Because you focus on what's important then after you're dealing with something like that.
That's right. Yeah. Hmm.
And I had my sons were young, and so I still help people and I like to make money, right? But at the same time, I focus on what is important to me and not just say, I've learned to not say yes to everything, Christian. I was guilty of that. I'm sure you
I,
understand.
I do understand that. Yeah.
Oh, this is so awesome. So what is those that are listening, the one big takeaway for them made me think of the Headspace podcast you have. What is one takeaway that they should know about to help get ahead?
I would say aim higher. I aim higher because most people will not, and that's a little counterintuitive when it comes to insights, right? See, most people will not aim higher. They will aim for the middle because they think they're incapable of doing the higher things. Well, what ends up happening is that if everybody aims for the middle, there's much more competition in the middle. But if
Mm.
you aim higher, there's less competition higher.
Ah,
Just, you know, so it's counterintuitive and it's the most risky thing you can do is actually aim for the middle. The less risky thing is aim higher. And
ah,
if you don't settle for the status quo, if you don't settle for the middle, you'll discover that you're capable of doing remarkable things, way more than you think you could, and reach remarkable ways to both have experienced life at a higher level, but also serve more people.
That is true. I like that. That's something that we all need to be aware of, and we overthink things sometimes too. You just gotta set that higher goal, target,
That's
and
right.
find the right path to get there. And you're gonna zigzag a little bit.
Always, always, always. Dream big dreams and zigzag
Yeah,
towards them rather than dream mediocre dreams and go in circles.
I love that. And I like the sign behind you, Dream Big Dreams. I can see that. It's so cool. So where can people, like your book is going to come out in the fall. It's right now it's recording, it's mid-October. Where can they find your book when it's going to be released on Amazon, I'm assuming?
Yeah, so you can go, actually, you can join the wait list even right now. So you can get an email when it's released. And all you have to do is go to bigreasonstoloveamerica.us. That's a website, bigreasonstoloveamerica.us. And or you can even just also subscribe to my newsletter. It comes out weekly. It's called Headspace by Christian Ray Flores, and the URL is christianrayflores.com. So you can have that's how you know.
I love that. I love your energy and what you're doing to help people. And you just need to keep doing what you're doing, aim higher, right? Yes.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and help others who aim higher.
Yes, that's what it is. That's something I needed to hear today, Christian, to be honest with you. Um, And for those that are listening, I'll include the links in the description that he shared with us. And I really appreciate your time. And I would love to connect again, Christian.
Thanks, Bridget. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.